Deep space is a place of elegance and discovery that contains thousands of secrets. The stars in the sky whisper to us how many mysteries there are in the depths of the universe. Today, we are here to find the key to these secrets and take an important step for humanity. This magical journey will extend to Kennedy Space Center. Kennedy Space Center not only opens the doors to space, but is also a monument to humanity's dialogue with the universe. Kennedy Space Center is where the first steps of the Apollo missions were taken and where the space shuttle Atlantis rose. This place is the source of courage, science and great achievements of humanity. This place, where astronauts undergo rigorous training and prepare in spacesuits, symbolizes that space is not only a place of discovery but also a place of learning. If you're ready, let's start. Kennedy Space Center emerged as an important part of the United States space exploration program and has a long history. The foundations of the Kennedy Center were laid in the early 1960s with America's goals of sending humans into space. The Apollo program was launched to achieve these goals and the Kennedy Space Center was built. This center hosted space shuttle launches as well as Apollo missions. It hosted the Apollo program's missions such as Apollo 7, Apollo 8 and Apollo 9. The most important was the Apollo 11 mission, which carried out the first human landing on the Moon in 1969. This mission highlighted the importance and success of Kennedy Space Center. This historic event strengthened America's leadership in space by highlighting the success of the Apollo program. The Space Shuttle program, which began in 1981, made Kennedy Space Center the hub of a broader space exploration program. It has hosted space shuttle launches and International Space Station projects. Kennedy Space Center became the center of the International Space Station project, which was launched in 1998. This project involved a space station realized in collaboration with the United States, Russia, the European Space Agency, the Japanese Space Agency and other international partners. International Space Station Module. It went through a long construction process by adding modules. While orbiting the Earth, the station was used as a laboratory for scientific research, technology testing, and understanding of living conditions in space. In addition to space shuttle launches, Kennedy Space Center also handled missions to transport astronauts and supplies to the International Space Station. During this period, he made significant contributions to scientific and technological research in space. The main purpose of the Kennedy Space Center is to host human space exploration programs, enable scientific research in space and support space station projects within the framework of international cooperation. Kennedy Space Center is a platform where new technologies are tested and developed. Devices and systems operating in space lead to innovations designed to improve life in space and on Earth. The International Space Station project is a joint effort of a number of countries. The Kennedy Space Station establishes a permanent presence in space under the leadership of the United States, in cooperation with Russia, Europe, Japan and other countries. This important center provides important data regarding research in microgravity conditions in space. This research can have applied implications in fields such as drug development, materials science and agriculture. It provides the opportunity to monitor and understand environmental changes on Earth through photographs and data taken from Earth orbit. This could constitute an important resource for various scientific and environmental projects globally. The main purpose of the Kennedy Space Center is to provide support for scientific exploration and human space programs in space, to pave the way for technological developments and to strengthen space exploration efforts through international cooperation. Let's examine the architecture and design of this station. Complexes at Kennedy Space Center contain complex infrastructures that enable the launch of spacecraft. These complexes include launch platforms, rocket assembly buildings, control centers and other support facilities. This region has large areas called launch platforms. These platforms include areas where the spacecraft is docked and where it will be launched. Platforms are usually made of durable materials such as steel and concrete. Launch platforms have combustion wells where flames and gases generated during the operation of rocket engines are evacuated. These wells direct and disperse the powerful energy generated during the launch of the rocket. The spacecraft's rocket is located in the rocket assembly buildings for pre-launch preparations and assembly operations. In these buildings, the rocket's parts are assembled, checked and tested before launch. The Ground Control Center, located near the launch complexes, manages launch operations. This center monitors, controls and manages all systems required to launch the rocket. Astronauts direct the launch process in control rooms at this center. There are special facilities for filling the fuel carried by the rocket before launch. These facilities ensure that the rocket is filled with fuel and oxygen and that the fuel is integrated into the rocket prior to launch. Launch complexes include a variety of pre- and post-launch support facilities. These facilities include maintenance hangars, warehouses, power generation facilities, communication systems and security facilities. Various measures are taken in launch complexes to reduce environmental impacts and ensure safety. These measures may include environmentally friendly technologies, water and air quality monitoring systems, fire safety measures and emergency evacuation procedures. Launch platforms at Kennedy Space Center contain a number of specialized hardware and systems that are often integrated into launch complexes and enable the safe launch of spacecraft. The most distinctive feature of launch platforms is that they have a wide and flat surface. This flat surface is suitable for the rocket to be launched and rise into orbit. In the middle of the platform is a launch lathe, where the spacecraft engages the rocket and the rocket is secured to the carrier. At this point, the spacecraft is securely attached to the rocket. Launch platforms have special facilities to power the spacecraft and transmit control signals. Electricity, data and control lines are actively used during the launch of the rocket. There are combustion wells on the platform to direct and control the flame and noise generated during the launch of the rocket. Sound insulation systems help reduce high sound levels during launch. Space Shuttle assembly and preparation buildings located in this space facility are important facilities where the assembly, testing and pre-launch preparations of space shuttles and other space vehicles are carried out. These facilities have large areas and include integration areas where parts of the spacecraft are assembled and assembled. The Space Shuttle, rocket, carrier vehicle and other components are assembled here. Assembly and preparation buildings contain clean rooms. Clean rooms ensure that sensitive components of the spacecraft are in a clean, controlled environment during assembly and testing. These rooms provide an air environment free from dust, particles and other contaminants. Various systems, subsystems and components of the spacecraft are tested in these facilities. Electronic, mechanical and software tests are performed. These laboratories are used to check the spacecraft's pre-launch functionality and performance. It includes special facilities where the propellants carried by the spacecraft, such as fuel and oxygen, are safely filled before launch. These facilities provide the fuel the spacecraft needs during launch. The assembly and preparation buildings have special transport and elevator systems to transport spacecraft to the launch complex. These systems complete pre-launch preparations by transporting spacecraft from assembly facilities to launch platforms. The spacecraft has climate control systems to provide a suitable environment for its sensitive equipment and systems. Temperature, humidity and other environmental conditions support healthy preparation of the spacecraft. These buildings include offices, meeting rooms and security facilities for personnel involved in pre-launch preparations. Security measures are implemented to ensure the safety of launch complexes and assembly facilities. Space Shuttle assembly and preparation buildings ensure that spacecraft are thoroughly tested, assembled and prepared before a smooth launch. The Space Shuttle Atlantis display at the Kennedy Space Center is an impressive exhibit that shows visitors the history of space exploration and highlights of the Space Shuttle program. This area not only showcases the Space Shuttle Atlantis, but is also equipped with interactive exhibits and informative materials related to space exploration and science. The focal point of the exhibit area is the retired Space Shuttle Atlantis itself. The shuttle is displayed horizontally on a platform with a special mounting and display system. Visitors can examine the shuttle in detail and observe the size of the spacecraft. The area where Atlantis is displayed has special platforms where visitors can view and photograph the shuttle from various angles. These platforms provide visitors with an interactive experience and allow them to walk around the shuttle. Some exhibit areas may include simulations and virtual reality experiences that offer visitors the opportunity to take a virtual tour of the space shuttle. This allows visitors to explore areas inside the space shuttle and participate in missions. The Ground Control Center is a central facility at Kennedy Space Center that manages launch operations and controls space missions. This center is used to ensure the safe sending of astronauts to space, to direct launch processes and to coordinate space research. Within the Ground Control Center are control rooms designed to manage different missions during launch. In these rooms, controllers and experts who manage launch operations monitor and control the process to ensure astronauts are sent safely into space. It includes specialized data tracking and collection systems to monitor and collect large amounts of data generated by the spacecraft during launch and while cruising through space. These systems constantly monitor the status of the rocket, the performance of the spacecraft and other important data. Maintaining constant communication with astronauts and spacecraft during launches and space missions is critical. The Ground Control Center has advanced communication systems for this purpose. These systems ensure safe and continuous communication between ground stations and spacecraft. This point provides planning and coordination of space missions. Mission planning includes a wide range of activities, from determining launch dates to scheduling space exploration. The Ground Control Center is responsible for launching the spacecraft and controlling it while traveling in space. The Control Center directs the movements of the rocket and spacecraft to ensure the spacecraft reaches orbit safely, trains and supports astronauts for their missions. It manages the pre-mission training process and provides the information astronauts need before and during launch, makes plans to be ready for emergencies. The Ground Control Center plays a critical role in successfully managing and controlling space missions at Kennedy Space Center. Kennedy Space Center has a number of testing laboratories essential for various space projects such as space exploration, and rocket launches. These laboratories are used to evaluate the performance, reliability and durability of spacecraft, rockets and other space systems. There are laboratories where spacecraft, modules and other components are tested. In these laboratories, factors such as spacecraft's endurance to various conditions, thermal performance and electromagnetic compatibility are evaluated. Spacecraft are exposed to various environmental conditions to ensure their durability in space. These conditions include temperature changes, vibrations and vacuum environment. At Kennedy Space Center, environmental testing laboratories are used to test spacecraft's resilience to these conditions. For Mars exploration projects, there may be laboratories that perform simulations of the Martian atmosphere and surface. In these laboratories, the performance and durability of spacecraft that will land on Mars are tested. Electromagnetic compatibility is important for electronic systems on spacecraft to work in harmony with each other. At Kennedy Space Center, electromagnetic compatibility laboratories test the electromagnetic interactions of spacecraft. These test laboratories are critical infrastructures for the successful planning, preparation and implementation of the Space Center and space projects. Thanks to these laboratories, spacecraft are meticulously tested before being launched into space, increasing their reliability and completing the mission successfully. Kennedy Space Center is the centerpiece of the United States space program and has hosted a number of major space exploration missions. These missions include manned and unmanned space exploration and often include launch complexes, control centers, and space research facilities. The Apollo program is a space exploration program initiated by NASA in the 1960s to achieve the United States goal of sending humans to the Moon. This space center hosted launch complexes that housed Saturn V rockets designed specifically for the Apollo missions. Saturn V was a powerful rocket used to launch human spacecraft to the Moon. Apollo 11, the most famous mission of the Apollo program, was launched from Kennedy Space Center in 1969. This mission made history when humans set foot on the Moon for the first time. Astronauts Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin was launched from the Apollo 11 launch complex and went to the Moon with the crew of Aldrin and Michael Collins. Kennedy Space Center hosted the Astronaut Training Center to train Apollo astronauts and prepare them for their missions. Astronauts received various training at this center, such as walking on the Moon surface, spacecraft control and emergency scenarios. Apollo 13 was a mission to go to the Moon, but a malfunction occurred during the mission. In this case, Kennedy Space Center coordinated rescue operations to bring the astronauts safely back to Earth, ensuring the successful recovery of Apollo 13. Within the scope of the Apollo program, Kennedy Space Center also hosted other missions such as Apollo 12, Apollo 14, Apollo 15, Apollo 16 and Apollo 17. These missions aimed to land on the Moon and conduct scientific research. Apart from these, 4 space shuttles named Atlantis, Discovery, Endeavour and Columbia were designed, assembled, prepared and launched at the Kennedy Space Center within the scope of the Space Shuttle program. These shuttles have successfully completed a number of different space missions. Kennedy Space Center played an important role within the scope of Mars Rover missions and hosted these missions. Mars Rover missions were carried out by spacecraft designed to explore and conduct scientific research on the surface of Mars. Mars Science. The Mars Rover, named Curiosity, developed as part of the laboratory mission, was launched from the Kennedy Space Center. Curiosity successfully landed on Mars in 2011 and carried out various scientific research and analyses on the surface of Mars. Kennedy Space Center coordinated the launch and landing of Curiosity. The Mars Rover, named Perseverance, developed as part of the Mars 2020 mission, was launched from the Kennedy Space Center. Perseverance will land on Mars in 2021, expanding data from previous missions and providing more information about Mars geology and history. He managed important preparations before Mars Rover missions. This includes processes such as assembly of the spacecraft, testing, pre-launch preparations, and training of astronauts. These stages are critical for Mars rovers to be successfully launched and reach the Martian surface safely. The Ground Control Center served as the control center during Mars Rover missions. He undertook the analysis of data obtained during Mars Rover missions and the coordination of scientific research. These studies include various studies to learn more about Mars's geological structure, atmosphere, climate and history. Kennedy Space Center has played a key role in Hubble missions, such as the launch of the Hubble Space Telescope and performing maintenance tasks. Hubble is a space telescope in Earth orbit designed to make astronomical observations. The Hubble Space Telescope was launched from Kennedy Space Center in 1990. The Space Telescope was placed in Earth orbit and had the capacity to make astronomical observations. However, the observations were not as sharp as desired due to an optical error that the telescope initially experienced. A series of repair and update missions have been undertaken to correct Hubble's initial optical defect and improve the telescope's performance. Some of these missions were conducted with the Space Shuttle operated by Kennedy Space Center. During repair missions, Hubble's cameras, spectrometers, and other equipment were updated and improved. Hubble-related missions have been carried out primarily by the Space Shuttles Atlantis and Discovery. These shuttles carried astronauts close to Hubble and carried out maintenance and update operations. The Hubble Space Telescope has made many important scientific discoveries through astronomical observations from space. He has contributed to the world of science in many areas such as the measurement of intergalactic distances, the birth and death of stars, the discovery of distant galaxies and the verification of black holes. Kennedy Space Center plays a key role in NASA's Artemis program. The Artemis program is a space exploration program that aims to return the United States to the Moon and establish a sustainable presence on the Moon. Kennedy Space Center is involved in many aspects of the Artemis program. Integrated mission planned as part of the Artemis program was launched by Space Launch System rocket and will guide an Orion spacecraft to the Moon. Kennedy Space Center plays a key role in executing this launch and preparing the spacecraft. Artemis 2 is a crewed flight mission and includes preparations for an advanced flight to the Moon. The Space Center plays a key role in the launch of Artemis 2 and managing the journey of a crewed spacecraft towards the Moon. Within the scope of the Artemis program, the construction and preparations of Gateway, a small space station to be placed in lunar orbit, are also managed by the Kennedy Space Center. Gateway will serve as a bridge for missions to the Moon. Gateway modules will be launched as part of the Artemis program. These modules will be launched by Kennedy Space Center's launch complexes and placed into lunar orbit. This space center contributes to the development of lunar landing systems that will be used within the scope of the Artemis program. These systems will have the ability to transport people to the lunar surface. The Artemis program includes the goals of landing on the Moon and establishing a long-term presence on the Moon's surface. Kennedy Space Center will play a key role in the planning, management and execution of these missions. Although Kennedy Space Center is generally known for its launch, staging and assembly operations, it is also home to a number of space exploration projects. These studies are generally related to the analysis of data from space, the development of new technologies and the expansion of space exploration. It hosts research on atmospheric sciences and climate change. Data obtained from space plays an important role in research on the composition of the atmosphere, climate changes and environmental impacts. Mars exploration projects and the study of other planets have led this center to host projects investigating the existence of life in space. These studies may focus on topics such as the potential for life on distant planets, the availability of water, and the suitability of planets. Kennedy Space Center also contributes to research on gravity and physics in space. Experiments and observations on space stations enable important discoveries in materials science, biology, and physics in microgravity environments. It contributes to research on future high-speed flight systems and space transportation. This includes studies on the design, energy efficiency and acceleration technologies of new generation spacecraft. Kennedy Space Center is also involved in the exploration of space outside the solar system through space telescopes and other observatory systems. Research to collect information about stars, galaxies and distant celestial bodies is among the Space Center's contributions to the field of space exploration. This research enables Kennedy Space Center to maintain its expertise in space sciences, engineering and technologies and contribute to the acquisition of knowledge that will form the basis of future space exploration. Kennedy Space Center plays a critical role in the production and assembly processes of spacecraft. These processes often involve a complex and meticulous process of planning, engineering and quality control. The production process of the spacecraft begins with the design and development phase. Engineers work on the spacecraft's functions, structural features, power system, communication systems and other technical details. Selection of appropriate materials is important. Selection of materials that are resistant to environmental conditions such as space vacuum, temperature changes and radiation to which the spacecraft will be exposed is critical. Necessary materials are supplied. The manufacturing process includes fabrication and assembly of designed parts. In this phase, parts are produced, assembled on the assembly line, and the main body of the spacecraft is formed. The produced spacecraft goes through a series of tests and quality control processes. During these processes, The operating capabilities, durability and performance of each part and systems of the spacecraft are tested. The spacecraft enters the pre-launch preparation phase. At this stage, it is configured to integrate with the launch complex. Fuel tanks are filled, all systems are checked, and the spacecraft is transported to the launch complex. When the moment of launch comes, the spacecraft is mounted on the launch rocket and sent into space by the launch complex. After the spacecraft is sent into space to perform the specified mission, it enters the operational phase. At this stage, the performance of the spacecraft is monitored, scientific data is collected, and the sustainability of the spacecraft throughout its life is ensured. Crews working at Kennedy Space Center perform a variety of missions, including space exploration and launch operations. Engineering teams play an important role in the design, development and production of spacecraft. These teams work on spacecraft structures, energy systems, communication systems, and other technical details. Assembly and testing teams assemble the produced spacecraft and then put them through a series of testing processes. These tests evaluate critical elements such as the spacecraft's endurance, the operability of its systems, and its pre-launch readiness. The launch operations team manages transporting spacecraft to the launch complex, integrating them into rockets, and pre-launch preparations. At the time of launch, this team takes part in the Launch Complex Control Center. The Space Mission Operations team manages operations in space after spacecraft launch. This team monitors the spacecraft's performance throughout the mission, collects scientific data, and ensures the healthy operation of the spacecraft. Science teams are responsible for planning, executing and analyzing space exploration. These teams make astronomical observations and analyze the data obtained using scientific equipment carried by spacecraft. The Communication and Control Center team provides communication and control with the spacecraft. At launch and throughout the mission in space, this team communicates with the spacecraft, sending commands and receiving data. Security teams are responsible for ensuring the safety of facilities and personnel. They manage safety procedures before, during and after launch. These teams enable Kennedy Space Center to successfully manage a variety of space projects. Each team contributes to the successful realization of space exploration and launches by working in their own field of expertise. At Kennedy Space Center, he has developed a number of pioneering technologies for space exploration, launch operations and other space missions. These technologies are designed to make space exploration more effective and reliable. Has developed various technologies to improve the design and engineering processes of space vehicles. These studies aim to produce lighter, more durable and functional spacecraft. The Space Center has developed more powerful, efficient and reliable rocket technologies by working on rocket engines and propulsion systems. These technologies make launch operations more effective. It constantly improves the technologies used in launch platforms and complexes. These studies enable safer and faster launch operations. At the center, sensor and detection technologies used in space missions are developed. These technologies help spacecraft better understand their environment and perform their missions more efficiently. At Kennedy Space Center, technologies have been developed to recover and reuse rocket parts. This is an effort to reduce costs and make space exploration more sustainable. Artificial intelligence and data analysis techniques are used by the Space Center to analyze large amounts of data collected from space. These analyses enable processing of astronomical data, identifying patterns and accelerating scientific discoveries. Technical innovations in space telescopes and other observatory systems play an important role in Kennedy Space Center's space exploration. Higher resolution images allow more detailed examination of distant galaxies and other celestial bodies. Don't forget to subscribe for brand new documentaries and more scientific content.